Are you sitting with thousands of hours of B-roll content and telling yourself, I'll start posting tomorrow? Are you in your head worried about your friends and family, thinking you're cringe for choosing to be visible? Are you chasing trends instead of building influence? Welcome to the Visibility Standard, where the visionaries of today are changing the rules of their industries and letting their voice be heard. I'm your host, Jazzmyn, and we are setting the standard. I am so excited for my guest today. She is the author of The Six Figure Creative. She works with astrology, business building, and really supporting folks in learning how to amplify their voice, building communities that are sustainable, and building business systems that are sustainable. Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Jazzmyn. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell my audience a little bit about your work. We're going to dive in about money wounds, why it's so tricky for people to talk about money. But I'd first love for people to get a better understanding of your background.
Yeah, so I am a Leo sun, and I've always been very creative. And pretty much my whole childhood, I was told, you can't have a career in the arts because you'll be broke. And so I kind of gave up the idea of being in theater, and I discovered film. And it felt like an industry where there was the capacity to earn decent money while also, being creative and being in the arts. And so I worked in film for a few years after graduating from university. And then it was right around the time of my Saturn's return. I was taking a master's in film studies in Montreal. I was working in the summers on film sets and studying in the winters. And I had a giant burnout. And I had really bad chronic fatigue for about 5 years. And I just did not know what was going on with my health. All I knew is like I couldn't work in film anymore because it was, like 12 to 18-hour plus days sometimes, lots of driving, going out on film sets all over. And I knew that it wasn't really creatively fulfilling me working on film crews. It felt kind of like I was in the army, like lots of driving up mountains and like moving furniture and things like this. And I felt like I wanted to be able to express my voice. And um, I loved traveling. So I thought it would be really fun to have an online business. And I thought I would have to go back to school and, it would take me years to retrain. But I got an invitation from a friend of mine to go out to Bali in Indonesia and be like a social media manager for her online wellness company. And I was like, oh my God, like this is the breadcrumb that's like leading me in the direction that I want to go. So I put all my stuff in storage, quit the film industry, went out there. And that's when I discovered that I was really good at writing. And I just did not consider myself a writer before then, but I was chiming in on meetings around her website copy. And my friend was like, oh, you're really good at this. And there were another couple of writers out there, freelance writers living in Bali. And so I was so nervous, and I asked one of them to go for lunch and I was like, do you think I could be a writer? And she like asked me all these questions and, she's like, yeah, it seems like you have a lot of experience in writing and, this is kind of how you start to get freelance work online. So I really just was like, this is my, divine like initiation into online entrepreneurship. And it was surprisingly, I just started getting clients very quickly. It took me a good few months. Just I put a profile up on Fiverr and, was like massively undercharging for my work because I had no confidence and was figuring out how to, make gigs and create different pieces of digital marketing for other entrepreneurs. And that's really what kind of rebirthed my life into entrepreneurship. And suddenly I had to pick my prices and, I had to navigate financial organization and just all of these other skills that I did not have. And it started to bring up a lot of just those old wounds around not feeling valuable, feeling like I couldn't charge good money for my creativity. And I really had to do the work to look at the root cause of those belief systems and those emotional patterns that were just really, I was freaking out about raising my prices and asking for more money. And I just didn't feel like it worthy. I didn't feel like it would work or that people would really value me or my creativity. And I had to do a lot of work around that. And it kind of led me on this down the rabbit hole on all of my childhood trauma And, and I was looking at where these stories really came from. And I did a lot of hypnotherapy and energy healing work, and really had to rebuild my identity and my belief system around my worth as a creative. And eventually led me to unearth some like hidden memories of childhood sexual trauma that had been suppressed. And the memories didn't come up until I'd healed a lot of the emotional, like suppressed emotions around it. And it was kind of like the final puzzle piece. It was like, oh, like no wonder I feel good about myself, when I just hadn't felt like I was capable of creating a sense of security or safety for myself as a child. And so all of these emotions were really being triggered in my relationship with money as I went into entrepreneurship. And I would just, I found it so difficult to sit down and look at my numbers, and even sending out invoices, like all of these, very important activities that your well-being and survival and security really depend on when you're an entrepreneur and you have your own business. So yeah, it took a lot for me to kind of process that. And obviously being British, we don't tend to deal with our emotions very well or talk about them or have tools to deal with them. So I had to build a whole new toolkit and was like, you know what? The universe didn't give me a choice. Like, I had to learn to feel my feelings and really take care of myself at a new level. And so I started a copywriting agency. I was writing a lot of copy for, more than 1,000 different types of digital entrepreneurs. And I really honed in on working with women. I started attracting coaches, and I started seeing that you can have the most strategically perfectly written piece of copy or launch content or Facebook ad or whatever. But if your mindset isn't there to back it, to really feel confident, to pitch, to really feel worthy to receive, to really follow through on, landing the client, making the sales, being visible and doing it consistently, that those two things really come hand in hand. And so that's what inspired me to launch my coaching business. And I really started focusing on the mindset work that had just made such a big difference for me. I doubled my income 2 years in a row. I replaced my freelance film income within a year of beginning freelance writing work. Then I launched my copywriting agency. I doubled my income from like 25K to 50K. And then I launched my coaching business and I doubled my income from 50K to 100K. And, I was working less. I was traveling the world to 18 countries. I was, really just felt so free, and like I could share my voice and impact communities that I cared about. Had time to pour into music and writing. And I really felt like I'd created the creatively free and fully expressed life that I was really craving. So yeah, that's kind of how I stumbled into this work.
First, thank you so much for sharing so much of your story. And I feel like so many within my audience can resonate, but I cannot help but pick out the fact or the idea that creating a stronger sense of self, feeling safe and secure enough within ourselves to jump into entrepreneurship really lays like the foundation for how we approach our business. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you know what? I always now, it's like you never know where the breadcrumbs are leading you, right? When you're like being called in a new direction, but then when it kind of lands and takes shape, you can look backwards and be like, now I can see that there were breadcrumbs even earlier on that I didn't realize were breadcrumbs, I think, one of the major moments that stand out for me was, so obviously because of my background, I always just had this urge to like get out of Dodge. Like I did not want to be in England. I always wanted to travel. I always just felt safer like not being in my home country. And I didn't make that connection obviously until later. But also I have a Sagittarius 4th house. So I just, I travel and I move a lot. And when I decided to book a one-way ticket out to Vancouver to go and work in the film industry there, I applied for like a year-long working visa. I'd been working in TV and film in the UK and was kind of like, is this it? Is this just like my career forever and ever? I wasn't really ready to like settle down. And I knew that there was beautiful mountains there and, it was more sunny. And I was like, I might as well go and do this job in a beautiful new place and have an adventure. And I had about enough money for, I think, about a month saved up. And, it's very challenging to get film work in London because there's a lot of gatekeeping, and people will tell you, oh, you have to intern for free for a year before someone will hire you. And, that wasn't an option for me. But thankfully, because I started working in Manchester, I, found work. But I was very prepared for it to be challenging for me to break into an industry in a completely new city where I knew no one. Anyway, I got there, and turns out film is one of the biggest industries in Vancouver, and pretty much everybody works in film. So it was like very easy to find opportunities. And just having that experience of like taking a risk, taking a leap, and landing on my feet, and so many people helped me. And I think that's the magic of really being on your own. Sometimes, it's like you're very open and receptive to everything around you. Like I met this incredible woman at an estate sale, and she helped get all of this furniture for me for my apartment. She worked in film. She hooked me up with this incredible job. She like lent me her laptop, and I was met with so much generosity, and it just completely shifted my view of the world. And I think it just gave me an example of like, when you take a risk, it might work out amazing, it might not work, but it also might work amazing. And I think that's what gave me the confidence to start to take more leaps, because it was like, well, why would I not risk it working out amazing? And I think that made a big difference in, having the confidence to then take bigger and bigger leaps and to trust myself. And, there's plenty of times where I took that leap to Bali, and that job that I went out for completely fell apart after a few weeks. And I was like really fucked. And that's, kind of where the opening scene of my book. And then I tell the story of kind of how I got to my first 6-figure year as a result of that. But there's been so many moments where it has not worked out, but I think just having that conviction and having that connection to what you really want, and then practicing giving it to yourself and noticing how good it feels, that you then just become less and less available for settling for things that don't feel good to you.
I was going to say, so much of what you share in your story is like risk taking and seeing it really pay out. And I loved working with clients when we talk about building self-trust, is there's always that narrative of what if it like just goes absolutely terribly? And I go, well, if it can go absolutely terribly, it can also go absolutely amazing. But if you don't even try, you're never going to know. And I think part of learning how to build self-trust is when things do go absolutely terribly, when we do feel maybe that sense of fear, maybe that sense of urgency that like, oh shoot, like I don't know how I'm going to make next month's ends meet, or I don't know where my next check is going to come from. Sometimes that is the motivating factor enough to say, you know what, then it's up to me. And I've got to figure this shit out, and I've got to keep it rolling.
Yeah, and there's nothing more empowering than digging yourself out of a hole, because, then you don't feel as scared to take new risks, because you're like, I've got myself out of plenty of holes in the past. So if this goes wrong, then I'll still be okay. I'll still stand. And I think that was definitely the lesson for me from my in return, and obviously it sounds like I'm so courageous and I took all these risks, but like at that time, it literally felt like my back was against the wall and there was no other option. I think the universe forced me to learn these lessons, and I'm grateful that it did.
As someone in their Saturn return, I can say, yes, it feels like a whirlwind roller coaster. And then you are able to look at it and say, okay, wow, thank you so much for that lesson. You actually taught me exactly what I needed to know to move forward. And speaking of fear and risks, why is it so damn scary for us to charge our worth, especially as helping professionals? Why do we feel like this fear, this anxiety when it comes to setting our prices and setting our rates?
Yeah, I tell this story in my book, and I talk about it a lot, where it's like I explicitly remember sending my biggest invoice to date. And it was for website copy, and it was for $3,000. And literally my hands were shaking, and my head was going like, they're never going to pay this. They're going to come at you. You're going to get attacked for asking for this much money. Like, who are you? How dare you? Send the invoice. They literally paid it. I did the work. That website ended up getting nominated for an award.
When I decided to grow beyond the therapy room, I knew I needed systems that could keep up. Enter Jane app, the practice management platform that has my back. From online booking to charting to payments, Jane keeps everything streamlined so I can show up for my clients and create content, build my brand, and run my business with confidence. If you're ready to level up your practice, head to jane.app and use code JAZZ1MO for a 1-month grace period.
They were super happy with it. It's like, again, it's that risk of like, yeah, maybe this person will come at you, or maybe it'll be the best thing that happened in your business so far. And, you know, the way that I got over that ingrained fear was baby stepping it. And to answer your question, why? I think it's literally just decades and decades of cultural programming that we have no value. You know, whether you're a woman, whether you're a minority, just constantly hearing and seeing messages that you are not the status quo. You are not the patriarchal order, the value system that we have all been raised in, that has been set out for us. Like, we cannot underestimate the power of these continual messages in movies, in advertising, your teachers, even your parents. Like, previous generations have these ingrained thought systems that are just pervasive. It's like we're swimming in it. And it's a fact of our history. And whether or not you've been a more direct recipient of that through like misogyny or racism or like genderphobic language, treatment, like in your immediate relationships, especially in your upbringing, which, you know, does have the biggest impact on our identity. This is the importance of mindset work. Just knowing that unless you live in a tree and you are not plugged in to the culture, you're constantly hearing messages that like what you value isn't valued as highly as other things. We have to constantly reinforce those messages for ourselves. And that's what that daily mindset work is. Like, I think about it like brushing your teeth. You know, it's like if you don't want your teeth to rot and fall out and have stinky breath, we brush our teeth for 5 minutes a day. So if we want to have a healthy relationship with money and the financial system and the working world, we have to reinforce these messages that what I value is valuable, that what I have to say is important, that there are people out there who agree with me and think I'm valuable and are excited to pay me. And it can be fun and easy and relaxing to make money in alignment with my values without sacrificing my integrity or my authenticity. And, you know, that's really that consistent work that when we operate from that worldview and we plug that goal, I think of our brain as like a GPS. We have to plug in the destination that we want to end up at. So if we're focused on the fear, we're focused on what could go wrong, likelihood is we'll play in defense or we'll just end up there anyway, because that's what we're focused on. So that's that daily mindset of just 5-10 minutes a day. Where do you want to go? What do you wish was true? You know, like what is the program that you want to operate from, so that we start to naturally make decisions from that place. And our intuition starts to guide us to solutions and people and places where it's easy to live out that worldview. And then it, you know, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I used to listen to my affirmation like every day, you know, when I was like walking around the grocery store or like brushing my teeth, I would just listen to the affirmations on repeat. And I noticed as they just slowly, one by one, started coming true, you know, like little by little. And that's really the power of our own voice and the conversations that we have with ourselves. And then, yeah, we might have to create new patterns and new evidence. And it's like, that's the gap that's challenging, right? If we don't have any evidence that I can make money doing this work, or I can charge this amount of money, or I can have this much rest or freedom or joy or creative self-expression or whatever it is that we want. But we have to take that risk and take that leap and just keep going after it until we start to get the evidence of like, okay, well, that didn't completely work out, but progress was made, you know, or I just keep taking a step and another step and another step until we get where we're going. And that's really the power of mindset. And that this whole, you know, transformation with my relationship with money showed me is that as long as you're focused on what you actually want, does it really matter how long it takes to get there? You know, as long as you're going to end up where you actually want to be. And obviously, you know, we evolve and we can tweak and change along the way. But instead of just constantly settling for the status quo, giving ourselves permission to be delusional and, you know, stay connected to that vision and stay plugged in that vision and just one day at a time moving towards it.
I recently just made a video about manifestation and I talked about programming at the subconscious level. And so listening to those affirmations and truly embodying the person that we say we are, being that person already, making those connections, making those moves, spending that time living as if it is happening. And then you look at your reality and you're like, damn, this is like in the reality now. And then we have new evidence, and then we have to integrate that new evidence and to build new messages. But it's amazing how when we just give ourselves that permission to be delusional, to embody it, to just allow ourselves to build a new narrative for ourselves of what can manifest in the tangible.
Yeah. And it might feel like it's taking a long time. And then you look back and you're like, oh, that was quick. Don't underestimate the power of your focus.
How do you incorporate astrology into your work?
When I discovered astrology, it just gave me so much confirmation on things that I'd been feeling intuitively, but had maybe been resisting. And actually, for me, a part of it was sharing my story about my trauma. Like, I really had a big question mark over that because it obviously involves people in my life. And it was really scary to publicly share that for fear of the backlash that I might get. And there was a particular placement in my chart, which basically showed me that my intuition to talk about it was spot on with my chart placement. And I was like, wow, like this is an incredibly powerful tool for those of us who are in leadership, who are storytellers and creatives, you know, who are creating new pathways and new ways of doing things, because the only way you can create something new is by trusting yourself, right? Like that's literally the most important skill. If you want to create something that you haven't experienced before, but it's something that you desire, you're pretty much taking action based on your desire, based on how you feel. And, you know, as we've spoken about, it's so easy for us to just override our own inner authority and be like, oh, well, no one else thinks this, so I must be wrong. Or no one else is validating this, or no one else is giving me permission. Or maybe there's not even a single other piece of evidence that what I want is possible because I want to do it in a new way. And so I started bringing it into my client work because, you know, when you're trying to lead, you're trying to stand out online, you're trying to attract clients to buy your work, to do your work, to build your mission, you know, to create the vision of the world that you want to see through your work. Like you have to stand out. And then, you know, there's so many people doing the work that we do, no matter what field you're in, there's many other people who are doing it, right? So why would somebody choose you? The reason why anyone has ever hired me, the reason why anyone ever gets hired when you are a personal brand, when you're a teacher, a leader, or just a professional who wants to have influence on other people's lives, they choose to follow you because they resonate with who you are. And our astrology chart is just a reflection of who we are. It's like a map of our soul, of our gifts, of our strengths, of our challenges, of our weaknesses. And yeah, so sometimes it can feel really scary to tell our story and to share our truth, right? Because of all of these patterns of not feeling safe to be who we are and to think what we think and feel what we feel. And so it just creates that extra layer of confidence and certainty of like, what you feel is right. You know, what you feel is important and valuable. What you have to bring and offer, it is really important. And here's proof, you know? And so I started creating content prompts around my clients' astrology placement. And we can also look at our challenges, you know, like Chiron, for example, that's like it's an asteroid known as the wounded healer. And it's that one place in life where you just keep falling flat on your face. And I remember when I learned about that, mine is in Gemini, which is like the wound of words, right? And so often we lead from what we've overcome. So we can look at Chiron, we can look at Saturn, the real life challenges that we face. Because usually when we face a challenge, we've had to build a lot of strength and skill and resilience to overcome that. Mm-hmm. And that this becomes really valuable to share with others, you know? And so when I discovered that and I realized that everybody has a Chiron placement, I was like, oh, I'm not just weak and broken and struggling and like everyone's better than me. Like we tend to think sometimes. It's like everyone's got their shit. Everyone's got their thing that has them on their knees over and over in their life that they're like, why? You know, why does this keep holding me back? Why do I keep falling on my face in this? Why is this so hard for me? And so when I discovered that, you know, that really empowered me to talk about my challenges as well as my Saturn placement. And that just creates so much relatability, right? Like no one wants to learn from a leader who's like, it's always gone well for me all the time. Like I've always done it perfectly. I'm just very good at this. Nobody wants to learn from that person. We want to learn from people who understand what we're going through so they can empathize with us, so they can help us build a path out of whatever challenge that we're facing. And so these are really powerful stories for us to share, as well as obviously being really clear and confident in claiming our gift and claiming the things that we are naturally really good at, because that is another thing that we can benefit our clients with. So it became such a powerful tool for that. And also for really pinpointing, like when we are struggling, obviously money, you know, there's so many places in the chart that can show us where we have challenges in behavior patterns, subconscious blocks, karma, in our relationship with money and our work and being successful at what it is that we do. And I think it's just such an empowering tool to be like, oh yeah, this is just a challenge that I'm facing in this lifetime. But now I understand that about myself. I can build systems and build skills and build support to help me to grow and to overcome these challenges to, you know, get to the fullest expression of myself. And so, yeah, anytime you're in doubt about something, I find it's such a great place to come back and just be grounded, to remind yourself who you are and to just keep going.
Mm-hmm. I love that you emphasize the value in highlighting what sets you apart, because a lot of service providers will promise the outcomes, promise the deliverables. And so if everyone is making the same promise, we've got to lean into what sets us apart. We've got to allow ourselves to be different, allow our messaging to look different, because that's what's going to resonate with people. That's what's going to draw people in, is having a similar sun sign as you, or having a similar music artist, or knowing that you've experienced a challenge that they're going to be looking for support in. It allows some relatability, and it takes us off of this pedestal that we have it all figured out, that we've done it perfectly, that we have crushed it every single time, because the reality is we probably have not crushed it every single time. And now we have the skills to at least support people and being able to make their different choices. I always think of astrology as a blueprint for working smarter, not harder. So when I started learning more about my own chart, especially my Chiron as a relational therapist, I was like, okay, this allows me to work in more like energetic alignment.
Yeah. And I think it can save a lot of time and energy of trial and error, especially when we're learning from mentors or we're learning new skills, especially in the online space. There's nothing wrong with doing it the way that somebody's taught you. But I think we can quite naturally and unconsciously start doing it like the people that we're learning from, which can lead to everyone sounding the same and everyone kind of like blending into the noise and it not feeling as like comfortable or committed to say the things that we really want to say and really tell the truth of our story, which, like you say, those are the pieces of content that really make you stand out to people and really help people get to know you. And we can also look at our 7th house for your like client compatibility, as well as the ruler of your 4th house. These are good things to look into to really get insights around, well, who are my most compatible clients and what are the qualities that they're seeking in me that I can really make very, very obvious and lead with because, yeah, everyone's different, even if you're doing a very similar type of service, we all have a convergence of all of our different chapters, all of our different skills, everything that we've lived through or overcome or succeeded at or learned really blends into what makes us unique and what makes us uniquely positioned to be really, really good at helping very specific people. So the more clear you can get on really like, what does it look like when you're doing your best work? Who are the people that you can actually help the most? When you can position your brand storytelling around these topics, that's when you can significantly raise your prices and attract really those like soulmate client relationships that just feel effortless to work with and are so joyful, and sales becomes easy, and you can build a brand where you really just get to show up and be fully yourself, which is just the ultimate freedom, right?
What's a mindset hack or an affirmation that has allowed you to work on receiving money? Like being able to sit with your rates, sit with what you have to offer and accept that and know that the right people will cling to it and happily work with you.
I think, honestly, well, I share this in my book and I call it the post-it note strategy. And it's literally just picking my number and writing it on a post-it note and having a number goal and being really specific with my number goal, and then just continuing to focus on it every day, to write it down multiple times a day, to really, I think, get your nervous system familiar with this amount of money, this actual dollar amount. Because like I said, whatever you focus on, you're naturally going to start to gravitate towards that. And that was really like my entire journey to my first six-figure year, was just focusing on a new number and really being willing to obviously take different action every day. And my intuition would just lead me. Well, things would get my attention. I'd be like, oh, what's this about brand positioning? Maybe I should learn about. Oh, what's this about high ticket sales? Maybe I should learn about that. Right. And just take baby step by baby step. If you take tiny steps one day at a time, yeah, maybe it might take you a little bit to get there, but you'll get there if you keep focusing on it and you keep focusing on that dollar amount. And then obviously there's a million different ways to make a certain dollar amount. And then you just get to continue to tweak and refine the way that you're doing it until you're making the money that you want in the way that you want to.
Man, I am definitely going to borrow that because
Yeah, read the post-it note, put it on your laptop, put it on your desk, and write it down a few times a day and just be like,
yeah.
what I'm choosing to make.
I love that you even include too. It's like getting your nervous system used to receiving that money, because we can receive it and maybe then feel like we won't know how to hold it. And so getting your nervous system in a position to see this number, to sit with this, see what it would feel like, and getting yourself used to it. And then ultimately working up to the belief that you do deserve to make this number or deserve to make this living or have this lifestyle.
Right. Because think about it. You pick a goal, and maybe the first chapter of moving towards that goal is I have no idea how I'd make that money. Or I have an idea how I'd make it, but I don't really want to do. So, the questions start to arise, right? And like just asking powerful questions like, okay, well, how do I want to make this money? And then slowly you're going to start to answer that question. And then you're going to come up with a plan. And you're going to be like, oh, I can see how I could make this money in a way that's fun and exciting to me. Okay, like what's the next question that you have? What skill gap do you need to close? What questions do you need answering? What support do you need? What actions do you need to take? And if you keep moving towards it, like you'll figure it out and eventually you're going to get there. And imagine, it's like sometimes the opportunities are there, but we're not seeing them, right? And I would always see this with myself. Like whenever I got back into a scarcity spiral and I was like, oh, I'm not going to have enough money to pay my bills. Where's the money going to come from? Oh my God, freaking out. And then I would sit down, do my money mindset work, focus on my goals, do my affirmations, open up my inbox and see that there was actually emails in there from people who wanted to work with me, but I did not see them because I was in an anxiety spiral. So imagine when you're that focused and you're like, I'm ready to receive this. I'm open to receive this. This is my goal. when an opportunity comes up and you're like, oh, I can see how this fits into my plan, or this would help me meet my goal. You're like, you see it more as I choose this, I'm choosing this, even if it's really scary, even if there's still all these limiting beliefs, like me when I was sending out my biggest invoice. It's like, you're more likely to do it and to make that move or make that ask or that pitch or say yes or bump your price up and, to choose to be actively working towards the actual dollar amount that you want. And I think that's honestly the biggest thing that holds people back with money, is that we're just not focused on it. Like, and there's a reason, there's a reason why sex and money are taboo topics. The church didn't like it, right? It's like, well, it disempowers people. It keeps people out of powerful spaces when we are not in touch with the things that bring us the most power. And so having that conversation with yourself every day, just being with your money, asking questions, making moves, taking actions, learning, educating, skill building, the only thing between where you are now and where you want to be financially is a skill gap. It's just learning skills that you get more comfortable and more capable implementing. It's not because you're not good enough. It's not because you're not worthy. It's not because you're destined to failure. You have the capacity to build the skills to live the life that you want. And I think that's just the most empowering mindset to continually stay with every day.
Yeah. Sarah, this is so going to resonate with my audience. And I thank you so much for all the wisdom that you have brought to this space and just for sharing your story and the strategies. I certainly am taking something away from this conversation. How can people find you? What are some of your offerings that you have right now?
Thank you so much for having me in this conversation. Yeah, you can find me at withsarahmac.com. You can find my book on Amazon. It's called The Six-Figure Creative, Heal Your Relationship with Money, Doing Work You Love. My name's Sarah Mac, M-A-C. And you can find me on Instagram at Sarah Mac Magic. And my podcast is the Creative Magic Club, where I'm having a lot more conversations about money and astrology and content strategy and all the things entrepreneurship. I would love to say hi, send me a DM, let me know what landed with you. And I can't wait to share more.
So as a closing question, I have been asking my guests what their commitment was to themselves for 2025, but I have changed that question as we head towards the tail end, the last 6 months of this year. What is one word that would describe how you want to feel by the end of this year?
Well, the word that came to mind is pregnant, which that's my goal this year. But when I am pregnant, I want to be relaxed. I want to be a relaxed pregnant lady by the end of this year. So hold that vision for me, please.
And I love that you just spoke that and shared that into the universe. And I love that for you. And I could hope to continue watching your journey. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you so much.